Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a descent that never ends. Imagine the ground beneath your feet simply dissolving, replaced by an agonizing pull toward the center of something ancient, dark, and utterly forgotten by the light of the sun. Most of us think of the afterlife as a destination we only reach after the heart stops its final beat, a place shrouded in the mystery of the great beyond. But throughout the dusty corridors of human history, there are whispers of those who did not wait for death. There are accounts of men who walked into the abyss while their lungs were still filled with air and their blood was still warm. They crossed the threshold into the realm of the dead, witnessed the machinery of eternal suffering, and somehow, against all cosmic odds, they returned. But they did not return whole. They brought something back with them, a chilling knowledge that changed the way humanity viewed the divine and the damned forever. The concept of a living man visiting the underworld is a recurring shadow in our collective memory. Long before the modern era, in the silent, candlelit rooms where the first scriptures were penned, there was a man named Enoch. He is perhaps the most mysterious figure in the entire biblical canon, a man who walked with God and then was no more. But before his final disappearance, the ancient scrolls tell us that Enoch was given a guided tour of the celestial and the infernal. He was shown the prison of the angels, a place so terrifying that it defies the descriptive power of human language. Think about the sensory reality of such a place. It wasn't just a prison of bars and stone, it was a prison of atmosphere. Enoch describes a place where the very air felt like it was made of jagged glass and frozen fire. He saw the Watchers, those celestial beings who had rebelled against the Creator, chained in a darkness so thick you could touch it. He brought back the warning that the universe is far more terrifying than the simple world of sheep and shepherds we see on the surface. But the most detailed and visceral account of a living visit to the depths comes from a much later tradition, one that has haunted the subconscious of the West for centuries. We often think of the Apocalypse of Peter as a lost book, something hidden away by the early church because its visions were too intense for the common believer. In this text, Peter is granted a vision of the underworld that feels less like a spiritual allegory and more like a forensic report of horror. Imagine the smell that greeted him as he descended. Not just the smell of smoke, but the heavy, metallic scent of burning sulfur mixed with the stagnant stench of 1,000 years of unwashed grief. Peter saw a place where the punishment was a perfect, twisted reflection of the sin. He saw a lake of flaming mire, a thick, bubbling sludge that glowed with a sickly, pale light. He describes the sound. Not just screams, but a rhythmic, unending thud of souls hitting the walls of the abyss as they tried to climb out of a darkness that had no top. But why would a loving Creator allow a living man to see such things? To understand this, we have to look deeper into the philosophy of the divine warning. A visit to the underworld isn't just about seeing fire, it's about experiencing the total absence of God. When these early travelers returned, they didn't just bring back stories of demons, they brought back a specific type of trauma. It was the realization that the underworld is not a place of chaos, but a place of terrifying, clockwork order. Every soul there knew exactly why they were there. The thing they brought back was the concept of the conscience that never sleeps. They described a worm that never dies, not a literal maggot, but a gnawing internal realization of one's own failures that eats at the spirit forever. Imagine the psychological weight of knowing that your own memories are the very tools of your eternal torment. That is the secret these travelers whispered to the world. Think about the physical toll such a journey would take. If you were to stand at the edge of the gates of death, as described in the ancient texts, you wouldn't just see a gate. You would feel a drop in temperature so sudden it would crack your teeth. You would feel a silence so heavy it would make your ears bleed. In the accounts of those who allegedly visited the pit, they described the light of the underworld as darkness visible. It wasn't that there was no light, it was that the light itself was black, casting shadows that moved on their own. When the first traveler returned from this place, he brought back the fear of the void. Before these visits, many cultures viewed death as a simple sleep or a shadowland of boredom. After these visits, death became a high-stakes courtroom. The traveler brought back the keys of urgency, the idea that every second of life on this earth is a precious, fleeting chance to avoid a reality that lasts for trillions of years. But here is where it gets truly unsettling. Some scholars believe that these visitors didn't just bring back stories, they brought back a stain. In the apocryphal legends, it is said that those who looked upon the face of the abyss could never look at the sun the same way again. Their eyes were permanently dilated, as if they were still trying to see in the lightless caverns of Tartarus. They brought back a vibration, a frequency of sorrow that infected the communities they returned to. This is why, in many ancient traditions, a man who returned from the dead, or the underworld, was treated with both immense reverence and absolute terror. They were the marked ones. They were walking reminders that the floor of our reality is very thin, and beneath it lies a vast, hungry machine waiting for the unrighteous. Consider the great gulf mentioned by Jesus in the story of the rich man and Lazarus. He describes a chasm that no one can cross, but the visitors to hell brought back the news that while the soul cannot cross, the voice can. They described hearing the echoes of the rich and the powerful crying out for a single drop of water. This brought a revolutionary shift in human society. It was the birth of the idea that earthly power means nothing in the face of eternal justice. The traveler brought back the democratization of fear. He told the king that his crown would melt in the same fire as the beggar's rags. This wasn't just a religious story, this was a social earthquake. The knowledge of the underworld became a weapon used to keep the powerful in check, a reminder that there is a judge who cannot be bribed and a prison from which there is no escape. But what was the most specific object or piece of knowledge brought back? In some esoteric traditions, it is said that the visitor brought back the true name of the abyss, not hell or Hades, but a sound that, when uttered, the very earth trembles. They brought back the understanding that the underworld is actually a living entity. It isn't just a cave or a hole, it is a creature that expands with every soul it consumes. They described the walls of the pit as breathing, pulsing with a slow, agonizing rhythm. This realization changed everything. It meant that the underworld wasn't just waiting for us, it was actively hunting. It was reaching up into our world through our desires, our hatreds, and our secrets. The visitor brought back the maps of the soul, showing us that the geography of the afterlife is mirrored in the geography of our own hearts. As we look back at these terrifying accounts, we have to wonder if the visit ever really ended. When you hear the wind howl at night, or when you feel an unexplained chill in a place where something terrible happened, are you feeling the breath of that world reaching through the cracks? The first human to visit the underworld didn't just go and come back. He opened a door that can never be fully closed. He brought back the heavy knowledge, the weight of knowing that the choices you make in the next 5 minutes might echo for the next 5 billion years. He brought back the vision of the scale, the sight of every word and thought being weighed against the purity of the divine. So when you look into the shadows tonight, remember the traveler. Remember the man who walked through the gates of fire and lived to tell the tale. He didn't bring back gold or gems or power. He brought back a mirror that shows us not who we are, but what we are becoming. He brought back the chilling truth that the underworld is not a fairy tale told to scare children, but a landscape that is being built brick by the lives we choose to lead. He brought back the warning that the most terrifying thing about hell isn't the fire or the demons or the darkness. It is the fact that once you were there, you realize that you were the one who built the cage all along. He brought back the silence of the abyss, a silence that still speaks to us today, if only we are brave enough to listen to its cold